everybody, and welcome back to my channel. And today I've got a political topic for you. It's from the European Parliament website, which I'll link down below in my video description, and it's called Parliament Calls for a New Ambitious EU Disability Strategy. It was uploaded on the 19th of this month, so I'm just going to quickly scroll down to see what it says. It says, as the current EU disability strategy comes to an end, Parliament is calling on the European Commission for an ambitious post-2020 strategy to discover its priorities. So what would the Parliament want in this new EU disability strategy? The European Parliament wants an inclusive society in which the rights of people living with disabilities are protected and adapted to individual needs and where there is no discrimination. On the 18th of June, Parliament adopted a resolution with its priorities for a new EU disability strategy post-2020, building upon the current European Disability Strategy for 2010 to 2020. Parliament wants the EU to lead in promoting the rights of people with disabilities and calls for an ambitious, comprehensive and well-funded strategy based on the principles of diversity and full inclusion. The resolution calls on the European Commission for a new strategy to be developed in close cooperation with people with disabilities, their families and organisations, a gender-based approach to address specific forms of discrimination against women and girls, the mainstreaming of the rights of all people living with disabilities into all policies and areas, clear and measurable targets and regular monitoring, recovery and mitigation measures to avoid people with disabilities getting disproportionately affected by health crises such as the current COVID-19, equal access for people with disabilities to healthcare, employment, public transport and housing, the implementation and further development of the EU Disability Card pilot project, which allows for mutual recognition of disabilities within some EU countries, and a common EU definition of what disability is. So how many people with disabilities are living in Europe? There are an estimated 100 million people with disabilities living within the EU. The employment rate of persons with disabilities aged 20 to 64 stands at 50.6% compared to 74.8% for people without disabilities back in 2017. 28.7% of persons with disabilities in the EU are at risk of poverty, social exclusion, compared to 19.2% of the general population in 2018. 800,000 people living with disabilities are denied the right to vote within the European Union. And I'm going to go down to see what it says next. Hold on a second. EU disability measures so far. The European Disability Strategy was put in place to implement the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. So what is the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities? It's an international, legally binding human rights treaty setting minimum standards to protect the rights of people with disabilities. The EU and all member states have ratified it. Both EU and member states are obliged to implement the obligations according to their competence. Among the concrete initiatives launched thanks to the European Disability Strategy is the European Accessibility Act, which ensures that more products and services like smartphones, tablets, ATMs, e-books are acceptable to people with disabilities. The Directive on Web Accessibility means people with disabilities have easier access to online data and services online because websites and apps operated by public service institutions such as hospitals, courts, universities are required to be accessible. So what are the next steps from the European Parliament? The next steps are that the European Commission announced in January that it would be presenting a new disability strategy within 2021. So yeah, I just thought I'd comment on that as someone on the autistic spectrum. I think that this is a brilliant step forward for all people concerned with disabilities within the European Union. I think it's good news they are actually going to get this done within 2021. I think it's something that needed to be done a long time ago. And for the politicians to actually take this seriously and to actually get a written policy up to include people with disabilities included within this statement and to actually get their families involved is a brilliant thing. It helps improve communication and builds up a professional rapport with them. It helps get them on board to setting this up, and it can only be a good thing for both the European Union and people with disabilities who finally are getting their voices heard. I feel that this is going to work really well for people with disabilities, but at the same time I'm quite critical that they're going to make mistakes. There's going to be a lot of trial and error with this because it's not all going to be plain sailing, and I think there's going to be a lot of work done to make sure that the policy is perfect and to make sure that people with disabilities are involved within their own care and that they are involved within this government legal binding document. So like I said, I will link the article down below so you can read more about it, and I'll update you as soon as there is an update. And thanks for watching, guys. Bye.